Oh, and coming to you live now. This is I Need Living Conversations 124th session. I'm with Sacred Blue Heron Women, who is in Indianola, Oklahoma, and I'm Julian Catari in Jalapa, Veracruz. And this is the fourth session of a series of videos of sessions we've had where we talk about into the mysticum of the Holy Mother. And it's been a long dive inside of the mysteries of revealing the mysteries of what we think is a mystery of living in harmony with Mother Earth and how her intrinsic workings work, kind of how the cosmos works. And that's what we're revealing, and that's what we will continue here.
Living in the arms of a mother of love. That's what this is all about.
Right, there we go. And
whether it's cosmic, whether it's Mother Earth, they're both the same, one and the same.
Mm-hmm. Maybe realizing that, that's the thing that we're so in denial of, that the society and the programming, domestication has us repeating and perceiving and doing, is the negation of the denial that we're living conscious beings, and that a living conscious being is living unconscious not because of just a mechanical, physical matter mechanism, but because there's spirit, there's mind, there's something that cannot be quantified as matter.
Right.
That is crucial for that to exist. So that's what we've been discussing.
Absolutely.
And the subject we're diving deeper into today. So welcome everyone. And here we go.
So we may repeat a little bit. I don't remember exactly where I stopped last week, but so worldwide architecture was the mother of art, as people built to live within her body shape, right? Mm-hmm. Primal people understood quite clearly that the shape of one's dwellings is the shape of one's life. So think about that. We all live in square houses, so we all live in a box. Mm-hmm. There's nothing boxy about Mother Earth or the cosmos.
Very few things that are squarey.
Yeah. So in the Gaia hypothesis, James Lovelock defines our Earth as a living being, breathing, co-responding body, creating its own atmosphere, feeling its own needs, and relieving its own stresses. And this is far from the mechanical model that we all know of Earth as a merely passive receiver of stimuli from the sun and sky. So this new hypothesis shows us an Earth as a desiring organism, shows us that Earth is a desiring organism, exhibiting will and direction, and quite capable of reciprocal relationships with all her creatures that she brought forth. And the Earth force, or Gaia force, Pachamama Pachataita force, has been found to be like a magnetic current emitted by underground waters in motion and under pressure. This force is affected by the movements of the moon and stars and sun, and in turn has great penetrative powers and affects the cells of everything: humans, animals, trees, rocks, everything. So this force contracts and expands daily, making Pachamama Pachataita a breathing animal, so to speak. And these spiraling forces form an energy network all over her surface, affecting germination and growth of everything: trees, plants, animals, humans, everything. But our modern technologies mechanistic technologies tend to cut across the lines of this earth force, and so set us against each other in a force field of antagonistic vibrations. The old sciences and technology found ways to locate and tap into her flow, integrating human and earth energies through ritual in a strong and harmonious field. So in matrifocal cultures, the human communities lived in harmony with nature's ecosystems. They knew that everything went back to nature in an eternal cycle. In a natural ecosystem, one dead organism becomes energy for another life. The cultivated fields and farmlands also develop their own ecocycles. So in Indonesia, for example, up to 40 different kinds of plants will grow in the same fields. And these wise systems are developed for the simple reason of living directly with Earth's capacity for plenitude for all and not for profit. So in AD, I would imagine this is now Common Era instead of AD 1000. Now into the patriarchy, African men were accumulating larger and larger herds of cattle as symbols of personal wealth and status. And these herds were used only for their milk and blood and not for meat. So they multiplied rapidly and destroyed the savanna ecosystems. The cattle were male property. The more cattle and the more status that meant they had. And women were also bought with the cattle. So under patriarchal animal breeding, the animal mothers are reduced to mechanical units of production in grotesque denial of their motherhood and the principles of healthy growth. And I can vouch for this because all university systems and the Farm Service Agency, they talk about cow-calf unit as units in agricultural units. They're called, it's how many units. Not how many cattle, how many units. Absolutely. So few people realize that cows have to be subject to constant pregnancy so that milk, cheese, and cream can be produced. Hardly any cows in a dairy herd are allowed to suckle their calves for more than 3 days so that humans can consume milk. And so that I can receive that extra milk that humans don't consume to give to my pigs and then waste hundreds of thousands of pounds of plastic into nonsense because of all the gallon jugs that get wasted. The calves are then, am I angry about this? Yes. I'm fed up with our stupidity. The calves are then raised by machine, and the males, little boys, little bulls, go to live in a dark, tiny doghouse for a while. They're stuffed into this tiny, dark doghouse so they can become veal. Is this true? Yes. When I was driving school bus in Quincy, I drove by the big cattle ranchers, and I saw all those lines and lines and lines of dog houses filled with little bull calves. It's disgusting. I will never eat veal. The rennet used to make all our commercial cheeses has to be taken from the stomach of a newly born calf. Why am I talking about this? Because we need to face the cold, hard reality of what we're doing to each other. So the rennet comes from the stomach lining of a newly born calf. Let's think about this. How would you like, anyone listening out there, how would you like me to take your newly born son or daughter and scrape its stomach to make cheese for you to eat? Same difference. So the modern dairy cow lives a life of hell in continuous childbirth, separation from her calves, and constant milking, as well as standing knee-deep in excrement and being given antibiotics to combat the mastitis that naturally results. So the USDA allows a certain amount of pus cells in milk as okay, but this is why they have to deaden it, to pasteurize it and ultra-pasteurize it, because they allow pus cells in the milk.
Yeah, I knew that.
I know, I figured you knew that. But
It's terrifying, and it's become a popular knowledge. I think a lot of people know that.
Poultry, chickens, turkeys are all force-fed, and they have their beaks cut off and kept in tiny bitty spaces. So if we are what we eat, then what are we when we eat foods produced like this?
Waste.
So we're going to shift here into the moon, All Mother as moon goddess, moon time. So we're going to leave that angry frustration,
Okay.
of that feeling of angry frustration hanging out there. So as a stimulus for people to wake up. But we're going to shift into a different shape here. We're going to shape shift. So human life begins at fertilization of the egg, and human culture and intelligence began with birth, with the female's experiences of surviving pregnancy and bearing children and keeping them alive. And this came about with a moon calendar. And anthropologists have described the keeping of lunar calendars specifically by women. And they know among the Australian Aborigines and 6 Siberian tribes and the Yurok Indians of North America that they all kept lunar calendars, their women did. Because the women, the midwives, knew that pregnancy was exactly the duration of 10 lunar months. They had to know this. It was just natural knowledge. So as an anthropologist has said, it makes sense that menstruation, lunar calendars, and midwifery are as much or more at the foundation of human science than man. But this kind of simple sense is so easily overlooked because the biblical idea that humanity began with the crime of disobedience and woman coming out of man is just simply fallacious. So the capitalist Darwinian notion that human intellect begins with a clever act of self-interested murder and plunder and self-aggrandizement is also fallacious. Absolutely. And I'm using that word. It's fun to say, but it's also less disarming than saying it's wrong. Because it leaves the human mind going, what the hell is fallacious? So when Neolithic people settled in village sites, they began building their calendars in stone circles that were to be used for lunar and solar observation, as well as religious ceremonies. Or perhaps maybe it was the other way around. Perhaps the ceremonial observatories and the power centers formed of these fixed points of stone were the loci that gave rise to the settled farming communities that replaced nomadic hunter-gatherers. However, what comes from this is that early women and men's thought processes were still organic, rooted in nature and practical experience, not alienated or born of a desire to conquer nature. Organic, rational thought emerged from a desire to cooperate with the natural world and from a real integral observance of the needs and rhythms of the personal self and the human community, along with the more than human community. It also emerged from a mind that was free of the inhibitions, blocks, and dogmas that have been imposed by our patriarchal religions and cultures. So the worldview that separates the observer from the system he observes, that imagines that the universe can be split into mere subjectivity and real objectivity, is not of her doing. She expresses the withness of the body. She is the Holy Mother Church, which Descartes challenged when he cut the umbilical cord between philosophy and the church, between spiritual living and the church. So the reason the Venuses of Lausel, or of the modern Virgin of Guadalupe are pictured with the crescent moon is that women and moon are a single mystery. The mystery is and was a reality. And it still is. And all original mystery was observed, studied, and pondered and participated in by original human beings. Mystery was not used as a tool of fear or oppression of obfuscation of power and power. It was used as a ceremonial food by the evolving human intelligence. For instance, the Lunda people of African Angola tell of a girl who discovered a method for measuring long distances and boundary disputes. In her daily tasks, she wove wicker work doors for huts from leather strips that measured a thumbnail wide. Can you imagine that? Thumbnail wide. Making doors out of leather strips, weaving them. That would be pretty cool, actually. So she noticed that an ox hide could be cut into a continuous strip to cover a great distance, and that all ox hides produce strips of similar length. So she suggested that the strips be used as a standard of measure by her tribe, and they did. So geometry and the human image were originally two expressions of the same divine image, the body of the universe. Number emerged from sensory matter. To the ancients, number was always founded in real and concrete human experience. And we're going to emphasize this over and over. Human experience, real and concrete human experience. This is what OWL Sustainable Life Dojos are all about, real human experience. And did not possess abstract universality or objectivity. The megalithic yard of the stone monument builders was 2.72 feet now that we know it, but it was the measurement of a human stride.
Wow.
Throughout classic antiquity, measurements were based primarily on the parts of the body, human experience, right? Units of linear measure were codified into abstractions gradually, and we have inherited a tradition of ideal forms and measurements that uses a numerical system that was exploited during the European Renaissance. This tradition can be traced back to Pythagoras, and he came to believe that mathematics is not just a language describing nature, it is inherent in nature, and he said that all things are numbers. And so for our modern world, a description was abstracted from substance and deified into an objective system. So Pythagoras thus introduced logical reasoning rather than organic reasoning into the domain of religion and ritual, laying the foundations for the later intellectual theology of Christian scholars and our world in general.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, they do numbers by human experience, right? This combination of mathematics and theology characterizes religious philosophy in classic Greece, in medieval Europe, and in our modern times. And consequently, God is no longer intuition or ecstatic vision, not profound ontological experience, but a kind of rational machine explained by a few scholarly men. During 300 years of witch hunts in Europe, this rationalistic theology was used as a legal and clerical weapon against what still remained of the ancient women cultures. Medieval scholastics not only debated endlessly and in dead earnest about how many angels could dance on the head of a pin, but during obscene torture, priests and civil judges also hounded their female victim with obsessive questions about the precise number of imps she employed and the number of times she had intercourse with the devil and the exact size and length of his member, and so on. This dogmatic insistence on number was supposed to cast an aura of rationality and objectivity around their bizarre and sick proceedings. Leaping this forward into modern forms, psychological measurements like behavioral norms, notions of quantifiable sanity and adjustment, deified number is still used as a power tool against social deviance. In contrast, Eastern mysticism, European pagan orientation, all the natural goddess worshipping cultures and primal orientation everywhere understands mathematics as one part of our conceptual map, means of apprehending a part of reality, but not an abstractable feature of reality itself. Because reality is truly undifferentiated, it is constantly moving and cyclic, like Grandmother Moon. So the bulging equatorial region of our planet is closer to the moon than any other parts of Pachamama Pachataita are. Probably for this reason, women who live near the equator and who are nature-oriented will tend to ovulate during the full moon. Because of the phenomena of menstrual synarchy, in which women living together tend to have their periods at the same time, a synchronous full moon ovulation would mean a synchronous menstruation near the dark time of grandmother moon. And mythology has always associated the two. Among early women, no one experienced their menstruation in private. It was not a personal phenomenon, but a datum of the female group. Group initiation rites were held when the young girls reached puberty, and it still holds true for a lot of Aboriginal people. The rites were a celebration of female power, an initiation of the young girl into the wise and careful use of that power for the benefit of all. Psychically, grandmother moon exerts a gravitational pull, which, confined with grandfather sun's pull, our planet's surface is then deformed by as much as a foot. The surface of the oceans are pulled into a bulge that causes the tides. And recent studies have shown that it is the light of the moon, perhaps more than her gravitational pull, that influences reproductive behavior in organisms. Earlier people saw the sun as the lesser fruit of Mother Sky. It was a female night with her cool moisture and magical moonlight that gave the life and fertility. Ancient people knew that the child is not only the product of human sex, but that children are also the offspring of the earth spirit, Pachamama Pachataita, joined with the astrological influence existing at its conception and birth. So Earth was considered to be the home of the children before they were born. And a lot of the Aboriginal people believe that the children lived around springs and things like that. But onto our Earth spirit, which is known as Pachamama Pachataita spirit, which is known as the dragon current, serpent path, or terrestrial magnetism, it is best felt at night. Night to our ancient ancestors was not an absence of light, but a powerful source of energy and inspiration. At night, the cosmos reveals herself in her vastness, and Mother Earth opens to moisture and germination under moonlight. And the magnetic serpentine current stirs herself in the underground waters, just as the thick, snaky spray of stars, the Milky Way, winds across the night sky. The moon goddess was the judge and the giver of law. And bright nights were spent sitting around the fire, thinking, contemplating, envisioning. And this is why words that have to do with mental activity are in most languages cognate with names for grandmother moon. For example, mens, mental, month, mind.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. We call the moon mother of the universe, having both female and male powers and reproducing herself all alone. Sowing and reaping were reckoned by the moon, sowing at the new moon and reaping at the old. All agricultural proceedings had to be timed with grandmother moon's changes. Since the tides are regulated by grandmother moon's cycles, she was believed to give all moisture from the morning dew, natural springs and rain to the great rivers and oceans. And the moon queen was the tribe's rainmaker. Grandmother moon also controls the fluids of the human body and the brain, as the moistest part of all is particularly subject to her influences. That's why we have lunatics. Right? So even the summer and winter solstices were calculated by grandmother moon. The first of each month fell on the night when the lunar crescent appeared. The crescent of the waxing moon came to symbolize increasing power and was later adopted as the emblem of Islam. And for this reason, all pre-Islamic tribes were moon worshippers.
Wow. Oh, this is incredible.
zodiacal constellations were called the houses of Grandmother Moon, and the zodiacal belt was called the girdle of Ishtar.
Mhm.
So this is where the concept of the houses came from. I've always wondered, where did they get this concept of the houses in astrology?
Okay. Yeah. Mhm.
So the perception of cyclical symmetry led to the invention of the wheel, and with the development of then the pottery wheel, men took over ceramics and began the mass production of items that had once been very lovingly handcrafted for local use. So this is another part of Owl's sustainable life dojo, is that we learn how to bring items out of mass production into handcrafting, loving handcrafting
Mhm.
for local use. The earliest representations of the Moon Mother were in the form of a cone or a pillar of stone. And the great Semitic moon goddess Astarte was worshipped on Mount Sinai by the Canaanites in the form of a stone pillar, long before Moses received the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments there. Mount Sinai, in fact, means mountain of the moon. And it is interesting to note that the Hebrew Levite priests were originally serpent priests, because Levi, meaning great serpent, as in Leviathan. So there is close resemblance among moon mothers everywhere, no matter what culture you look at. They're all resemblant. So they've got all some similarity. In this form, the great goddess is always the lawgiver, the orderer of time, the judge of the dead, and the eternal source of wisdom and ecstasy. Moon shrines and sanctuaries were situated in forests, in caves, and on mountaintops, by lakes, sacred springs, and wells that were also healing centers. So her priestesses guarded the water supplies as well as the sacred fires. And water springs that originated deep in the earth were believed to have magic and healing powers. Fire was the fertilizing power of the moon, sacred flame representing her light. Torches, candles, and bonfires were burnt to help keep the moon's fertilizing light shining. So the bonfires, torch processions, and candle burning at Christmas originated in the fire rituals of the goddess. On December 13 in Sweden, Saint Lucia travels in procession as the Queen of Light with a crown of candles in her hair, surrounded by her maidens, and even now that still happens. So, and of course, the evergreen tree, the gift exchange, the midwinter festivals of Christmas, all derive from the ancient pagan midwinter rituals of the goddess. Among pagan Scandinavians, Friday the 13th was celebrated as a beneficent day because Friday is Freya's day, the great goddess of the north. That's who Freya is. So many of the bad omens that we have been programmed for are simply reversals of what was sacred in the matriarchy. Ancient moon priestesses were called virgins. Virgin meant not married, not belonging to a man, a woman who was one in herself. And the word actually derives from a Latin root meaning strength, force, and skill, and was later applied to men with the word virile. Now imagine this. Virgin, Latin root, applied to men for virile, meaning sexually, right? But virgin means for women means no sex. How did we create such opposition? When the Hebrews used the word in the original Aramaic, it meant maiden or young woman with no connotation to sexual chastity, but later Christian translators could not conceive of the Virgin Mary as a woman of independent sexuality, so the distorted meaning came into being with sexual chastity and never being touched as virgin instead of a woman as one in herself. The moon goddess was worshipped in orgiastic rites, being the divinity of matriarchy. Women could take as many lovers as they chose. They could surrender themselves to the goddess by making love to a stranger in her temple. And this was not any kind of service to men, nor did any woman have to do this in order to live. It was simply a way for women to participate for a ritual moment in the trans-individual being of All-Mother Goddess. Because the goddess to them came into being in the moment of union, a moment of psychic as well as sexual union. And this way, men could also partake in her essence through the body of women. The rite of worshiping through sex was meant to recharge the living goddess and to open the ego consciousness into an experience of cosmic sexual flow and power. And it was a way for each woman to experience herself as the moon. Our ruling class patriarchal religions have not invited participation, as did the mother goddess religions. Instead, they demand obedience, a fearful obedience, which keeps human beings out of touch with our transcendent centers and magical techniques. An unthinking and alienated obedience keeps us dependent on their hierarchic, logical punishment and reward systems for our lives. The only way tyranny can maintain control over the human psyche is to set up a false god, a police god, in which the guise of religious morality interposes punitive and manipulative dualistic systems between our daily beings and the source of being, All Mother. It's been said that without the devil, there is no Christianity. Think about that.
That makes sense, yeah.
Without the devil, there is no Christianity.
You
Because
need the devil.
the good God forever at one pole and the bad devil forever at the other, the human mind under Christianity is locked forever into a battlefield of dualistic antagonisms with no hope of maturity. And this is why the very religious man I was recently involved with kept saying to me, there is no hope of peace. There's no hope of peace. There's no way we can have peace.
And if you get people thinking that way, that's what you need to actually perpetuate that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we need to figure, that we can actually just think differently and
yeah, exactly.
And know better.
Yeah, exactly. So the Christian mind, for all its development, remains undeveloped in the eternal specter of the cosmic football game between heaven and hell, good and evil, defined as two irreconcilable teams, because one must lose, one must win, and the spectator never then knows wholeness. Maturity is the reconciliation of opposites into the experience of cosmic oneness. So if humans eat this fruit of cosmic oneness, maturity as reconciliation of opposites, then patriarchal religions are out of business.
Yeah.
And a world free of psychic alienation would need no Christian salvation or salvation of any kind. It is the mother goddess who stands herself in the center and joins the opposites in her being. And we can all do that because we're all part of her. And that's all I have for tonight.
Wow. My God. We never know that we can, there's so much about history that is just not put into the right perspective.
Distorted.
It's distorted. And that's what we need to open ourselves to, is what you mentioned about the numbers not being some abstract fixed thing. It's always relative to what we perceive. So is history. History is totally relevant to who's telling it and what his purpose is in telling it.
Right.
And that's always a disempowering thing for the person, especially the history being written by the dominators, by the patriarchs,
Exactly.
which is never it never really wants to keep the truth as the main thing, right? It's always trying to accommodate things to its perspective, to its own purpose.
Well, they wanted to crush out any intention of this loving mother goddess who loves everyone equally. So, like I just finished a book about the African All Mother, right,
Hmm.
who started where the goddess religions quote seem to have come from. And in this book, her prophets were the Sibyls, and it talks about how the Jewish culture, the Hebrews and the Roman papals, took
Hmm.
all the Sibyls' prophecies and turned them upside down and on their heads. And then that's what the Christian Bible came from, is the original Great Mother, African Great Mother prophetesses, Sibyls.
Yeah.
But everything is turned. And so, like the Bible, the New Testament, after bringing this Christ of love and all the who supposedly all the powers they gave this man Jesus, the Christ, was all came from the Sibyls. That was
Hmm.
all the Sibyls, the prophetesses of Holy Mother, Great of Africa, could do.
Yeah.
But the papals, the papal Holy Roman popes and the Jews had to steal that because they wanted to twist it. They wanted a man in charge.
Hmm. And then all this is relevant. We're sharing all of this to you folks, because not just because we're here just to share things, and we believe in that the top thing you could ever do is have a channel on YouTube and Rumble. No, no, no. This is part of a much larger thing, and we're putting into motion a the evolution of mankind. We
Right,
are actually driving forward. We're bringing back our entelechy, the knowledge, the possibility, the mind change that allows you to know differently, and actually think there's a solution, and actually believe there's a solution, because we've been so convinced and domesticated into there's nothing you can do, you just get a job. and,
yeah,
uh, and there's a lot we can do, and there's just so much power in a single human being
there is.
when they recover their power, and when they recover that intellect, when they recover that knowledge and that imagination,
Remember,
that they can actually make a change in this world, and
yeah,
be part of something big, and be the breaking edge of justice, of healing, of bringing back health, wealth, sovereignty, and all that. So but then in that, there's a realization that cannot be accomplished through a individualistic, enclosed, capitalist kind of way, where, oh, I have my business, you have your business, and everybody has their business. No, no, no. When you open yourself to this realization, you discover that you need to come together, that we need to come together, that we need to gather. So
right,
this is like
yeah,
the great gathering, and we're calling for that great gathering. And I want to invite people to our great gathering. There's many ways they can participate in that. And here I leave the website, alohainidaliving.com, in case they want to be part of that, in case they feel the call to be part of something big, in case they're tired of of going to work. They're tired of the system. They're tired of being robbed. They're tired of politicians. They're tired of medical tyranny. Whatever they're tired of. There's a solution. And we come here each week and talk about really deep and inspiring knowledge and wisdom to enrich this action that we're putting forth. So we're here to just complement that, and of course have the opportunity to invite you to come into this powerful gathering of bringing forward a free world
that lives in plenitude, freedom, true freedom and plenitude and love and pleasure for all.
And real, yeah, you've said it, being able to and losing that repression, right? Losing that, you can do things without feeling oppressed, without feeling shy, without being, everything can be healed. And we can live in plenitude and be happy and joyful.
Exactly. So, and part of this is remembering ourselves as two-dimensional beings, spirit and matter, which means that once we were born into human baby form, it became our job. If we go back to when we talked about embryology, we remember he said the embryo is created from the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
I heard these words today from a lady named Paraquat, that it's, if I absolutely accept myself and I am growing myself from the inside out, I'm connected to my original nature of love. And this is what we all miss. Our bodies were formed from the inside in. So now we were born, brought into form, made from the outside in. And now as we mature, it's time to make ourselves from the inside out.
It's time to be born. It's time to come.
It's time to grow ourselves from the inside out, instead of trying to force our outer world. And she, in this course I'm doing with her on Calling in My Beloved, she talks about, I'll have to go back and listen, but she talks about purification and not the taking of the bath and the, like everyone, this cleaning, but an inward cleaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it brought me to realize that this obsessive compulsive belief that's so pervasive of cleanliness is next to godliness, and the need is because if we're trying to still create ourselves from the outside in. So if our outside world is absolutely spotless, means our inside world is, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So maybe if we focused more on cleaning our inside world of all the dogma and domestication, we wouldn't really give a shit if our outside world is so perfectly spotless.
And if somebody wants to do that, they can join the Owl Dojos, the school of how to do that. And and we've been preparing these amazing illustrated, beautiful books and lessons and all kinds of a guidance, because I don't want to scare people and make them think they're going to be kind of indoctrinated into something. No. And but this is really interesting, because we're always fearful of that, because everybody wants to avoid that. Everybody wants to.
We're so desperate of avoiding indoctrination that we fall right into it.
Right, something like that. So this is just to make it very clear and make it sound out loud. The contrary of indoctrination, this is about freedom.
Yeah.
Right? But then in the search for freedom, we sure can share some information about it and try to help each other and to reach that freedom. That's what we're trying to do, basically. So what's the next conversation going to be about?
Well, we're going to keep on diving into Holy Mother, Moon Goddess, All Mother, in matriarchal culture for at least next week, if not the week after. And then we're going to get into the crud, the scum of the mechanistic patriarchy.
Which is always interesting and engaging and important. So, okay, next week, invitation, no changes in the time. It's at 7 o'clock, Wednesdays, Aloha Nidao Living Conversations, the 5th session of Into the Mysticum of the Holy Mother.
Right.
And with that, I guess we'll leave you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, night, morning, wherever you are. Always look out the sun. Look at the sun. Anything else? Should we close it?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, see you soon.